All right, we're back. Graveyard Shift Movie Podcast, episode number 132. And this week, we're going back. We're taking it back. It's been almost a year since we watched the original VHS. Way back, I think I just looked up. I think episode 84 of the podcast was VHS. And yeah, and almost a year later, we're not. It was supposed to be, the Child's Play remake this week, but it's not. So I figured we watch VHS 2 that came out the next year. It came out 2013. The original came out 2012. Um, and at first, when I was watching it, I was like, I don't think I like this as much as the first one. But then the more I thought about it, like, I think I only really liked one of the tapes in the first VHS movie, which was the opening tape of the demon lady that they take to the hotel with them and shit. And besides that, I was thinking of the other ones that were in it, and I guess the one with the couple who's on vacation at the Grand Canyon is alright because of the twist that they have. But the rest of them, I don't know. But this one, I was watching it, and I found myself really liking like the vibe of a lot of uh the shit going on. Like I just liked. I don't know. I just liked the vibe of stuff that was happening. This one is a lot more supernatural to me, which sounds weird because I know there was a lot of supernatural stuff in the first one, but this one seemed like it goes overboard. Probably the best tape is the third tape, and it is just crazy with demons and just whole. We'll get into it, but it's pretty crazy. I don't remember what I gave the first one. I, I don't. I think I'm gonna give this one a five and a half. Yeah, five and a half maybe. Yeah, we'll go with that. Five and a half. Yeah, I don't, and I don't. I think there's four of these movies. I don't know where this one ranks, like amongst popular opinion as the best, VHS movies or whatever. But no, I might bump it to a six. I'm gonna bump it to a six because I'm thinking about it, and there is a lot of shit that I like in there actually. But yeah, we'll go with a six for VHS two. So hey, spoiler warning for VHS two. If you've never seen it, I'm gonna ruin everything about it. So you've been warned. First off, can I just say that there's no reason that any of the videos that we see should be on a VHS tape, because more than half of the videos that we see are filmed on GoPros, and I guess someone just converted them over to VHS tapes. The first one, was a lot of like the old cameras. I can't think of one that they were using like a GoPro or some shit. Like it makes sense that it's VHS tapes. But this one, at least two of the main ones I can think of are literally filmed on GoPros the whole time. One is filmed on a GoPro the entire time. That's another thing in this movie is they flip uh, perspectives in this one. Like you'll get someone else's can't like someone else will be filming and it'll switch over to their point of view, and it's not like it's someone else in a group of people that belong together. It'll be someone else that's in a different group that's filming what's happening, and you'll get that perspective as well. So I think that's new because I think for the most part the first one it was all from one camera. They never switched around. Maybe on because I think the last tape that they do is like those kids who go to a Halloween party or whatever, and the house is like haunted, and they're doing like a summoning in the attic or whatever. Um, and maybe that one flips around, but I'm not 100%. But this also, yeah, the first tape that we get into, it's filmed through a guy's eye. Like we go into some sci-fi. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of weird. I don't know how this stuff gets converted over onto a VHS, but it does somehow. Um, so the movie opens up with somebody filming this dude and this chick walking into a hotel room, and they instantly start banging. There's titties in the first 5 seconds of this movie because this guy's like filming them through a crack in the window and stuff. The maid ends up catching him, like spying on them, and she's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" She doesn't talk like that, but and he's like, "Oh, I'm not doing nothing." But they hear him from inside the hotel room, so they like open up the curtain, and the dude's just hanging full dong, there, which I believe is the 2 for 2 on dong in the VHS movies. I know that in the first one, like a dude gets his dong ripped off, but I'm not sure if you just. But this he's just naked standing there, and you're like, oh, okay. Um, he goes chasing after the dude who's filming, and the guy like goes and gets in his car and drives off and stuff. I thought I recognized the actor who plays this dude, but upon looking him up, I did not recognize anything that he had done previously, so I don't think he had. Um, Also, I saw that I don't think he directed this whole movie, uh, but I think he directed one part of it, or maybe he was a producer on all of it. But Adam Wingard, is that how you pronounce his name? Um, yeah, Adam Wingard. I saw that he directed that Blair Witch remake that we just covered a couple weeks ago. So, shout out to him. I don't remember which tape he was involved in making, or if he was just involved in all of them. But, so anyway, we learn later that this dude, like, he kind of does this where he's basically blackmailing this guy now. He's like, yeah, if you don't give me what I want, I'm going to show this tape to your wife and shit, because this guy was, like, cheating on his wife in the hotel room. And so, that's just what kind of he's about. But I guess he also takes jobs from people, because him and this girl who's driving, I don't know the relationship between him and the girl, but they go to this, like, apartment complex where this college kid, it was like the last place he was known to be or something. And I think he says that the mom hired them to go look for him because he's gone missing, and she wants to, figure out where he's gone. So they go to bust into this apartment. As they're about to bust in, the woman's like, "Oh, I thought I heard something in there, And they're like, no, it must have been nothing. And they go in, and the first room they come to, it looks exactly like the setup from the first movie, with all the different TVs that are all staticky and the VHS tapes everywhere and the VHS or the VCR player on the ground. I don't think it is the exact same place as the first movie, because I think the first movie took place inside of a house, the like main story connecting everything. But I could be wrong, but it looks almost identical, and I think there's obviously a reason for that. Um, so it fucking also there's a part. Whoa, well now I realize what that is. I was gonna say there's a part where the dude's looking around and he sees like a blood stain on the wall and he touches it and it's like fresh. And I wrote down that, oh man, if I go and watch the first movie, I could probably find where someone was bleeding and they touched that or whatever. But never mind, I know what that is. I'll leave you in suspense of realizing where it is. So they split up. The dude goes looking around the apartment and the girl stays in there with the VHS tapes. And of course, she's like, oh, let me put this tape in. Before she puts it in, we go over to the dude who finds a bunch of journals that this kid had left behind. And as he puts down his camera to look through them, we see in the background someone like move out of frame in the hallway and shit, and I was like, oh fuck, someone's lurking. Um, the lady puts in the VHS fuck what? She puts in the first VHS tape, and as it starts, we see someone come in behind her and start walking up to her. But before we can see what happens, it cuts away. So the first tape is this dude who wakes up in a doctor's office, and he's had some type of eye injury where he's lost his eye. So he's very rich. We'll learn that later. We see his like house later, and it's like got a pool on the side of the hill, and it's got this great view and stuff. So this dude's well off. So this is like this doctor practices in like experimental health and shit like that, like the newest stuff in medicine he's trying out. So they give him this robot eye so he can see now to replace his old eye. Unfortunately, like the chip in his brain or whatever to help with to work the eye, it messes with his biological eye, like his normal eye. So he can't really see through his first eye. They say, time goes on, and when your brain becomes more accustomed to the chip, the vision will come back to your eye or whatever. And so he's like, okay. And so they go, hey, with this eye, you might have some weird visions and stuff, as a side effect. Let us know if anything like that happens. And he's like, all right, sure, whatever. So he goes home and starts playing a GameCube for some reason, it looks like. And I was like, why the fuck do you have a GameCube when you live? I'm not knocking the GameCube. The GameCube was amazing. But it just seems so weird that this guy would have a fucking GameCube. He pauses the game to go like get some tea that he was making. And when he comes back, he sees that his controller has been moved from where it was. And then he hears a pan fall in the kitchen. He's like, oh, fuck. And he goes walking over to the kitchen. And he looks around, but, he doesn't find anything. So he's like, oh, weird, whatever. And he goes back to the bedroom. The whole reason we can see this, by the way, is that the doctors are recording through his eye to help get more information about what the eye does and how it works, so they can make better improvements, and shit like that. So they're recording everything that happens like this. So he goes into his bedroom. He's changing, and when he turns out or around from his closet, he sees someone laying underneath the sheet on his bed, and he's like, "What the fuck is this?" And so he pulls it back, but of course no one's there. But then he turns around, and there's this dead dude just staring in his face and shit. And he's like, "Oh fuck!" And he goes running out of the room. He immediately calls the doctor, and he's like, "Listen, I'm seeing fucking dead people. You gotta fix this shit tomorrow, bitch." And the doctor's like, fine, whatever, come in. And so he hangs up, and he's like, good, we'll fix this shit tomorrow. Of course, though, later that night, he hears some noises coming down the hall. And when he goes to look at what it is, there's a flash, and this dead little girl is standing there in front of him. And he goes running away, and I'm pretty sure, like, the dead guy pops up again, and he's like, oh, fuck, this is crazy, and he goes and he locks himself in the bathroom because he's afraid. He then falls asleep in his bathtub, and he wakes up, and it's the next morning, and he's like, oh, good, we're all good. And he goes into the living room and just lays on the couch and goes to sleep and wakes up, and it's 7 o'clock at night. Like, somehow this dude slept the whole day. I don't know how he did that, but it's pretty impressive. I wish I could sleep. I wish I could. I used to be able to. Not no more, though. Try to take a nap now, and maybe you'll get 20 minutes before you just wake up again, and now you're fully awake and you can't go back to sleep. This is also when I wrote down, gonna assume that this guy was in a drunk driving accident, and that's how he lost his eye, and these are the people that he killed, are the dead girl and the dead dude. When he gets up from his fucking 12-hour nap that he took, someone is knocking on his door, and he goes to the doorbell and he looks outside, and it's this woman who we saw earlier when he was leaving the doctor's office, who was like staring at his new eye as he was leaving, and she's at the door, and she's telling him that she has shit that she needs to tell him. So he lets her in, and immediately she just starts trying to bum painkillers off of him. She's like, "So you got any painkillers from the fucking doctor?" And he's like, "No, bitch, calm down." This chick tells him that she was born deaf, and when she was 16, her parents went to the same doctor or whatever and got her these earplugs or whatever to put in her ears, and she could hear again, but it also allowed her to hear frequencies that other people couldn't hear. And this is when she asks him who the little girl is, and he's like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" And she's like, "I could hear her crying as soon as I walked in." So this girl can hear dead people is her whole thing. So I guess somehow these science projects are allowing people to hear and see dead people, because sure. She tells him that the more that he interacts with them, the easier it is for them to hurt you. She's talking to him about some shit, and then behind her, out the window, this fucking old fucking dude who's naked except for in like tidy whities is standing at the window. And the guy's like, "I don't mean to freak you out, but there's a dude standing right behind you." And she's like, "I know, that's my uncle. He wasn't a nice person." And so immediately I was like, is this a weird, like, molestation thing they just threw in here? And she's like, "I know how to get him to go away." And she just immediately pushes him down on the couch and starts stripping and bangs him. Uh, and I guess that works. I do like the guy wakes up after, they get done banging, and he goes to the bathroom and he looks in the mirror and he's like, "All right, listen here, you science fucks. You're going to put that video on a hard drive and give it to me, but you're not allowed to look at it, but you get it to me," And, yeah, so he does that, and then he leaves the bathroom, and immediately they all start getting attacked by fucking ghosts. He watches as the girl he just banged gets dragged into his swimming pool, and she's getting drowned. He jumps in to help her, and he's also drowning, but he manages to get away, but somehow she doesn't, and she fucking drowns in the pool, and so she's dead now. He runs him back inside, but he keeps running into the dead girl and the dead dude. So once again, he goes into the bathroom and like locks himself in because it worked the last time. And in his mind, he's like, "All right, these are all like the visions and shit, like the doctor told me about. So I'm just gonna cut this shit out." But the woman had told him earlier that if he gets it removed, they're still gonna be there. He just can't see them now. But he doesn't care, so he gets like a straight razor, and he just cuts into his new robot eye and takes that shit out, and he like puts it down on the thing. And we see when he puts it down on the sink that the ghost people are still standing around him, and they of course just start attacking him. And then the dead dude goes and he gets the camera or the eye, and he shoves it down the guy's throat, and that's the end of the tape. Yeah, that's the that's the end of the tape. So I'm still pretty sure that I was correct in my assumption that this dude was in a drunk accident that killed these people, because he does tell the girl when they're in the middle of talking that he lost his eye in a car accident. But they never fully tell you that, and for some reason that girl's uncle is still there attacking him. I don't know why he would give a fuck about this dude, or what the deal is. This was by far the worst tape. Like, it was yeah, to kick off the movie nonetheless. The first VHS kicked off with that demon tape that is by far still the best tape out of all these movies. Is that whole hotel and running away from her and shit. But yeah, this one opened up on a big dud, and it almost killed the whole mood of the movie for me, because it was so like there was nothing new about it. It was so just cliche. Like, oh yeah, ghosts, and they attack you, and it's the ghost because you killed someone in a drunk driving accident. And in these VHS movies, say whatever you want about them, but for the most part, they do a pretty good job of like doing an original little, 10-minute, 15-minute story that you haven't usually seen. A couple of them, like the ending of the first movie with the kids going and the ghost hunt or whatever is pretty, like, you've seen that 100 times. um but yeah, it was a big dud, and like I said, it almost ruined the mood of the movie for me, and I think that's why I still almost gave it lower points, because I keep thinking about the opening of the movie and like, oh, that was kind of shit. But so there you go, that's the first tape of the movie done. So we go back to the main story, I guess you would call it, the underlining story connecting everything. And the two people have a quick conversation talking about what they found so far and shit. And basically the dude is like, all right, well, you stay here and just keep looking at tapes. I'm going to go and, keep looking through this journal to see if we find anything. She's like, okay. So she puts in the next tape. The next tape starts off, and it's a dude who is on a like BMX track in the woods, and he's about to go like riding his bike in the morning. He gets a call from his girlfriend, and he's like, oh yeah, sorry, I know I'm supposed to take you to breakfast, but I wanted to go riding the bike this morning. I'll be back to take you out in a little bit. And she's like, okay, have fun, be safe. And he's like, yeah. So then we get a straight up dubstep, like, first person. We're on the GoPro of the helmet of this guy just racing through the woods and shit. And that happens for like a minute or two, but then of course he runs into this chick who's all bloody in the middle of the woods, and she's like, hey, I need you to help, me and my boyfriend, we were attacked and shit. And then she like falls over and she starts throwing up what I thought was like this black sludge stuff, but I think it was just blood. It's just a lot of blood she was throwing up. And she's throwing up this blood, and so he's like, okay, I'll help, So he picks up this big stick on the ground, and he goes walking like into the woods towards where she was pointing to her boyfriend. And he's like, he's calling out. He's like, hello, does anyone, you need help? And the next thing you know, fucking zombies are coming out of the woods and shit. And I was like, oh fuck, I wasn't expecting this to turn into a zombie movie. And he's like, oh shit, and he turns around to go back to where the girl is, but it turns out that she had been bitten as well. So she wakes up and she's a zombie, and she immediately like chews out his neck and shit. And he hits her off, and he gets a rock and he like bashes in her head and stuff. And then he goes stumbling away, and he's all fucked up because he just got his neck chewed out. He keeps, walking and running away, but eventually this dude falls over, and he fucking, he starts doing the same, puking up the blood and stuff, and he dies. And as soon as he died, I was like, oh shit, are we gonna get like from the zombie point of view, because the GoPro is still on his still on his helmet? And then sure enough, these two people who are also out on a bike ride come riding over, and they see him in the grass like dead. And they come over, and they're very nonchalant about this guy that has his neck chewed out that's dead in this path. They just keep being like, it must have been an animal, and they don't seem to care. And especially it seems weird with the woman. She seems very non-affected, which, usually there's a little bit of, oh my god, but not in this woman. They called like the park rangers, and they're saying, hey, we got this guy out here who's dead or whatever. But then of course he wakes up and he's a zombie, and he fucking bites the dude's neck, and then the girl tries to get away, but he like bites her on the ankle, and she kicks him in the face, and she goes running into the woods. The dude wakes the zombie that we're on right now. I've never seen this before, I don't think. He's a zombie, and he looks down at his own arm, and he's like, and he takes a bite out of his own arm. But then he's like, ugh, and he spits it out and shit, But then he hears the dude that he bit his neck, like, moaning. And he turns around and he sees him there. And he goes walking over to him and just starts, like, eating off his fingers and shit. And then he, like, takes the guy's wallet and he tries to eat the money, but he doesn't like that taste either. But then he hits the jackpot because he lifts up the guy's shirt and just sees his stomach, and he's like, and so he just rips into this guy's guts, and he's just chowing down. And then out of the woods comes the wife who he had bit her ankle, who she is now a zombie as well. And so she comes walking in and just joins in on the feast, and they just start chowing down on this dude. And then maybe my favorite part of the whole movie is the dude who they're eating wakes up as a zombie and just looks at them both like, what the fuck are you guys, what are you guys doing to me? And you can tell they're like, oh, sorry, you know? And then we just cut to, now we got the whole gang. It's the three of them, and there's zombies going through the woods, and they stumble upon a kid's birthday party. And they just go to town, just start eating people and shit. This is when we get another camera angle of someone who's filming at the birthday party, and they just keep filming. The person with the second angle gets all chewed up and shit. They end up getting killed. The zombie who we're following around goes after this guy and his family who's getting into his van, but the guy manages to close the door in time, and it makes the zombie come face to face with like the window of the van, and he sees his reflection as a zombie, and he's like, oh shit, you know, what the fuck is that? But as he's looking at his face, he gets shot in the back. This dude has a shotgun now, and he's shooting some zombies, but he ends up getting overwhelmed, and the zombies overrun him, and they fucking eat this guy. The zombie we're following gets back up, and he goes walking towards this lady who's crying over her dead husband. And he sees like a teddy bear on the ground, and he goes to pick it up, but then a truck just runs his ass over. And he's like, oh shit. And I guess when the truck ran him over, it also caused his phone to butt dial to his girlfriend. Because the zombie is getting up again, and he's about to go over to where that girl is that's crying. But then he hears his girlfriend's voice, and he's like, oh, and he pulls out the phone, and it's her being like, oh, you must have butt dialed me, silly. You know, I love you, come home safe or whatever. And it causes the dude, it's weird because it causes the girl who he's coming over to eat to look at him almost like, oh man, this guy, you know, he was just a dude, you know? And like she feels bad that, you know, about this guy and his girlfriend. But it also causes this dude to, I guess, come out of his zombie state enough to where he goes crawling over to the shotgun that the guy left behind when he died and pick it up and fucking shoot himself in the head. And it's really cool because the helmet fucking goes flying into the air and like flips around when he shoots himself, and it lands down next to him, and we see the zombie dude dead where he shot himself in the head with the shotgun. And that's the end of the second tape. Yeah, I really like that one. It was a great premise of what if, you know, this guy gets turned into a zombie and we follow the zombie's point of view. Yeah, it's the shortest tape out of them all. But I really do. It's just it's a fun little idea that they put in here. So I really like that tape. Plus all the zombies the zombie waking up as they're in the middle of eating him is a great visual. And it's probably my favorite part of the movie when we get to best of worst of. We go back to the main story, and the guy comes back into the room where the girl's watching the tapes, and she's bleeding from her nose now. And she says that she has one of her migraines. And the guy's like, oh, well, take one of your pills. But when he goes into her purse, her pills are gone. But we do see that her gun is still there, because the guy had asked her earlier if she has her gun in case, you know, anything bad happens in here. And she's like, yeah. Also, on the tape, there's a laptop sitting there that has a webcam on that for some reason the girl never turns off. But we see that it's filming her and shit too. But on the laptop is like video diaries of the college kid. This is how they know they're in the right spot. It's because they can see that the college kid was here, and he was, he filmed himself talking here. And throughout the movie, we keep getting glimpses of him being like, "Oh, I know you have to watch them in the right order for it to affect you and all this shit." And he's part of this whole like fucking subreddit type of community that's all about these and so that's what he was into. He was into these tapes and shit. So he's like, all right, well, watch yourself. If you start feeling too bad, I'm gonna go back to the journals. And she's like, okay. So she puts back on another tape. I guess she's not worried about her fucking nosebleed. So this tape, these people go into what I read is like an Indonesian restaurant, and they're meeting with this guy who basically he has a cult, and he's talking about how him and his family are gonna cross over into a better plane, and all this shit, and they want to come and film him and his family. They offer to film them with an unbiased point of view, even though it's very clear that they have a biased point of view about this whole thing. But they want to come and film them, and the guy eventually relents, and he's like, "Sure, you can come and film me," So he allows them to come to his compound, and at his compound, it's this dude who is the head. He's the interviewer. There's then this woman who is his fiance, who is the producer of this documentary or whatever you want to call it. Then there's the guy in charge of setting up the cameras, who is the best friend of the interviewer dude. And then there's just this guy who's in charge of the sound, that they never really flesh out his character all that much, but he's there as well. So it's the four of them, and they're welcomed into this compound. Where as we get there, we pan through like the security footage, and in one of them, we see the leader of the thing just sitting at his desk, cutting into his stomach and shit. And you're like, what the fuck is going on, So they go walking into this compound. Immediately, the woman in the group is given this necklace that looks exactly like the Blair Witch fucking statues or whatever that was from the 2016 Blair Witch. And she's like, this shit's creepy. Here, you can take this shit. And she gives it to, like, some other dude. They go in to interview the father, who they call it. This guy's the father of all these people. He's their father, And on their way, we see, like, all these fucking classrooms of these children being taught shit. These, like... There's these rooms where people are just meditating constantly and, all this shit. And they're passing all this. And they go into the office where the father is. They start the interview, but then immediately the woman has to, like, vomit. And so she has to leave. And she's like, I'm sorry, I have to go, But I'm pretty sure it's all just I'm just now piecing this together. She wasn't actually sick. She was just sneaking out because she has a button on her blouse that is secretly a camera. So we have her point of view. And they weren't supposed to film the children. That was a thing that the guy had requested. But she sneaks into the classroom to film the children for their documentary. The guy in charge of the cameras goes to follow her and help her out. And it's a good thing he does, because the woman ends up getting cornered by these two, like, nun-looking ladies who were like, oh, yes, they're beautiful children, but none are as beautiful as the one you will bear and shit. And she's like, what the fuck are you talking about, And they keep getting closer and closer to her, and eventually the guy comes to the door, and he's like, hey, anything going on here, And he kind of bails her out of that situation. The dude who's doing the interview with the father brings up the fact that this guy basically is, like, banging these kids, and, he's getting them pregnant. Everyone here is, like, his wife, and, his wife, he calls them, he's like, oh, my wives and my daughters, and, they're all the same to him. And things get a little heated in the interview, so the dude's like, all right, I'm gonna leave for a minute so we can take a breather, So he leaves the interview, and he goes outside to where their car is, And in the back seat where all their equipment is, he goes to get like a fucking microphone or something. But he sees on the camera where the lady has her button thing that she's talking to the his friend, and so he puts on the headphones to hear what they're talking about. And it turns out, guys, that this lady is fucking the friend, and she's pregnant with his kid now. And so that's a whole. He's like, oh, you know, I think he's like, we could just keep it a secret from my friend so he doesn't have to know. But she's pissed off because of that, and she's like, fuck you, and she goes to leave. So we have this whole cuck storyline going on. The okay, so then the sound dude is in there where the father is, and he starts to ask him a question, but the father is like, no, hold on, I have to make an announcement. And he comes over the speaker and he starts going into everyone, it's time, all these months, all the years that's led up to this, it's finally time for us to ascend and all this shit. And just in the middle of this whole speech, just whips out a box cutter and just jumps over the table and just goes to town slicing into this dude's neck, the sound guy. And he gets up and he's all covered in blood, and he like slicks back his hair, and he just like starts kind of dancing and humming to himself. And this guy who plays the cult leader by far gives the best performance of the movie. He was great in this movie. I believe it's the dude who's being cucked finds a curtain, or he finds this extra room where there's this like medical curtain there, and we see like there's some blood coming on the curtain. So he goes back there and he finds this lady under the sheet with just all this blood, splattered around. And he moves the sheet off of her face, and we see that she's dead. But then he goes to put the sheet back over her, and she wakes up and she's screaming and she knocks the sheet off. And we see that this lady was pregnant with something, and it cut out of her stomach, or they cut the baby out of her stomach. And somehow she's still alive with her whole stomach is just cut open. So he goes running away. And eventually, well, first off, he goes running away. We go back to the woman who's pregnant, and she gets dragged away by all those nun ladies and shit. We go back to the cuck dude, and he runs into the classroom where all the kids were, but we see that they've been handed out these cups of poison shit, and they've drunk it all, and so all these kids are fucking, like, dead, And then, right after that, he goes into another room, and there's all these people standing around with guns, and they just start shooting themselves all at once. It turns into crazy shit here, where all these people shoot themselves. This one guy, I guess, is chickening out of the whole ritual, and he goes running away, but he gets shot in the back by this guy with a shotgun, and then the guy comes over and he tries to murder the cuck dude, but the cuck dude manages to shoot the guy in the head with the shotgun. He goes running into another room, but this room he gets caught and he's taken hostage in this room. Because this guy's got him at shotgun point. So it's like him and two other people who are caught with this guy with the shotgun. The best friend who fucked this guy's wife comes running about this time. And he comes into the room where the guy is, and he goes to help, but then the dude with the shotgun just points it at him like once, and the guy just kind of gives up and watches as the cuck dude is shot in the back of the head with a shotgun. So he's dead, and then we see off camera the guy with the shotgun shoot himself and die as well. So then we cut to the lady getting dragged away still by the women, and the father has joined up with them now too. And at this point, he's in tighty whities and covered in blood and dancing, and all the women are laughing and shit. And they drag her into this room And they close the door, and the best friend dude grabs a pipe and he goes running to the door, but then it just blows open. And he's like, what the fuck? And as he's laying on the ground, like a demon lady goes crawling on the roof above him. I'm not really sure what that was all about. It looked really bad too, but whatever. Um, so he goes trying to run into the room, but the father dude stops him, and he's like, "There's no reason to keep going. The ceremony has been completed." And then this dude just combusts. He just blows up and just guts and body parts everywhere, and he's just dead. And I was like, "All right, dude." Still, he goes running into the room, and we see that the pregnant lady is being held down on a table by all these women who are like possessed, I guess now. He goes over and immediately to the head nun, he just bashes her head in with a pipe. And then he just kind of rips off the demon lady's arms. He just kind of pops them off. So somehow, even though they've gained demon strength, their limbs have become weaker. I don't really know how that's happened. But he rips their arms off, and then they just kind of fall over. And then he goes to help the lady who's pregnant, but we see that her stomach has grown, for one, and there's blood underneath her shirt. And so he rips open her shirt, and we see that they've carved shit into her stomach. And there's this like demon baby moving around underneath the skin. And the next thing you know, it looks like a knife, but we'll learn later it's like a horn. It just comes and busts through her stomach and cuts her open. And this giant demon beast comes crawling out of her stomach. So the dude goes running away. But then we see, like, because all the people who are dead are back, and they kind of look like the zombies from earlier, but they're not. I think they're just demons or whatever. But either way, the dude goes running away from him because he's like, this is, wild. And they're all coming after him to kill him. So he runs away from the zombies, and then he goes into the classroom where all the kids are, and we see that the kids are alive again now too, but they look more demon-like. They don't look as zombie-like as like the other people. Either way, he's not messing with them, so he goes running again, but now he comes face to face with the demon beast thing that's chasing him, that's walking on two legs, but it has like just this, like not a buffalo head, but he's got these giant horns and he's smacking people out of the way and shit. He makes it through the whole time this is happening, by the way. An air raid siren has started up, and it's so much chaos. It's like the end of the world. Like, it's wild. I was wondering to myself if this was connected with the zombie story, the second tape, like if this is what caused the zombies to start over there, but I'm not sure. The dude manages to get outside and get into the car, and he starts it up and he drives away, but as he drives away, the beast thing comes out of the woods and smashes into the side of the car and flips him over, and he wakes up after a while, and he comes crawling out of the car. But above him, the demon thing stands on top of the car, and it calls him Papa. And the guy just sort of starts to crazily just laugh. And that's the end of the tape. So we don't exactly know what happened to that guy. It could have let him live, because like you said, it is his Papa. But, we don't know for sure what happened there. So that's the end of that tape. That was probably the best tape, honestly, of the whole thing. At first, it started off where I was kind of like, all right, another cult thing. But by the end, there was just so much chaos and all the, like, just the random suicide rooms. It was pretty good. It was pretty good. We go back to the main story, and the dude comes into the room where the girl is, and she's dead. She shot herself in the head with that gun she had. And he's like, oh, I can't believe you would do this. I can't believe you've committed suicide. And I'm still not sure how he didn't hear the shot. I mean, they're in this tiny apartment, and he had no idea until he got in there that she had shot herself. But anyway, he's like, damn, that sucks. better put in this videotape on the ground. So he puts in this tape. And this one, it's these two teenagers who were fucking around with their dog dressed up as robots and shit. And it turns out that their parents are leaving, like, on a trip for the weekend to go visit, like, their aunt or something. So they're leaving this dude and his sister alone at the house. But, of course, when they're gone, they invite their friends over and shit. And they, like, have a party and, you know, all this stuff. And it's really good vibes throughout this whole tape for the most part until it starts getting off. It's just, like, young kids, like, just joking around with each other and stuff. It was just really, it's nice. If you've watched long enough, you might, like, if you remember, like, The Conjuring, my favorite part of The Conjuring is how cozy it seems with everyone just together in that house and stuff. This kind of is the same way for me. It just had a cozy vibe. They're hanging out at the lake, and the one kid who has the GoPro on him goes underwater, and we see what I thought was like a merman or some shit swimming towards him. And he's like, what the fuck was that? But before he can think any more about it, another kid like jumps into the water but to block out the view or whatever. But he's like, oh, you know, still, that was weird. We get a shot of them leaving one of the friends locked up in a dog cage and like just spraying them with silly spring. And all I could think about was Always Sunny with Danny DeVito in the cage and Dennis being like, silence dog, and he splashes the fucking beer on him. But yeah, later that night, the dude sneaks into his sister's room where we see that she's about to hook up with her boyfriend, and they bust in and they start doing like a fucking rave in her bedroom as this is happening, you know, and she's like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Get out of here. In the middle of them doing that, there's this giant flash of light and like an earthquake or some shit just shakes the ground. And they're like, oh fuck, let's get out of here. And so the friends who snuck into the sister rooms go and they hide by the lake. But when they're down there, they see this light coming off of the water. And they're like, what the fuck is that, you know? But once again, before it goes any further, the boyfriend and the sister come running down there and, like, take their camera and shit. And then the boyfriend has a line here that a kid retorts to that I found very funny that I'll play here.
Fucking faggots, you can suck my dick.
I don't want to!
And after that, they go back inside, and later they catch the brother, like, jerking off in the living room, and they send the dog. They have this little dog. It's like Toto from Wizard of Oz. They put a GoPro on him, and they send him in there to film him and shit. And once again, you know, he's caught, and everyone starts laughing. But then there's another flash of light, but this time outside, they see these two people like standing out there, and they're like, what the fuck, you know? So they call the cops. The sister's boyfriend goes and gets a shotgun out of the closet, but immediately he goes walking off and just gets taken. Like, you just notice he's gone at one point, and they're like, what the fuck, you know? And then there's another flash, and just straight up aliens just spawn in their living room and just start grabbing people and taking them away. And all this is from the point of view of the dog. And they stuff all these people in these sacks. And they stuff the dog and this little kid in this sack. And I guess they're taking them under the lake to where they live, because the sacks start filling up with water. But they manage to pop the sack, and the dog gets up top where the sister and the brother are. And then the kid comes floating up back to the surface because he's drowned a lot more than they did. They get him up on the dock and they start doing CPR on him, but in the background we see these aliens crawling up onto the dock and coming towards them and shit. But somehow they manage to resuscitate him in time to run away and go and hide behind these trees. But of course the dog barks at the aliens and draws their attention to them, but the police show up finally, and so they're like, oh, thank God, we're saved. But as they run towards the cops, the entire police force legit just gets vanished away by these cops. It was creepy as shit, honestly, when it happened. The aliens catch up to them again, and they grab the brother. And they take the brother away. The dog tries to help, but it just gets smacked like away. Um, the sister and the kid run towards this barn, and they go and they lock themselves in. And then the aliens are busting in, so the sister sends the kid and the dog up into the attic of the barn, and she gets taken, you know. Um, of course, though, this doesn't save this kid. He just immediately just starts getting sucked into the air through the barn, and he's holding on to the dog. But then the kid vanishes when he's holding the dog, and the dog falls out of the air and lands on the ground, and then the camera falls off of the dog to where it points at him, and we have to watch as this dog dies as it fell from the sky. And that's the end of the tape. Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Really made me feel bad. Literally, I wonder if it's in my notes. Hold on. Um, Here we go. Of course, they just start and so on. He gets taken up in the sky. Oh, as I was, because I'm doing voice message to write down notes. As he's falling out of the sky, I go, "Oh man," you know, because I'm like, "Oh man, can't believe they would do that." So anyway, we go back to the guy who's sitting there by the dead lady, and he kind of looks at the laptop where the video of that college kid is, and he presses play. And the kid talks about how his mom supports him in everything he does and stuff. And now it's time for him to make a tape of his own. And then he pulls out a gun and he shoots himself under the jaw. But it's a botched suicide. He's still alive. He gets up and like his jaw, and he goes stumbling off down the hallway. And as the video keeps going, we notice the guy and the dead girl who's next to him come walking into frame. And so this happened right before we got there. When they were outside and she mentioned she heard a sound, that's what she heard. That guy shooting himself. And I was like, oh shit, you know? Of course, right at this moment, the lady wakes up and now she's a demon. He like snaps her neck, but it doesn't phase her. She's running on all fours towards him. So he goes and hides in a closet and waits for him or her to stick her head in, and then he shoots her in the face. And he's like, oh, thank God. But then he hears like this gurgling next to him, and he moves some clothes aside. And of course, there's that kid who shot himself, and he's sitting there, and the kid jumps on him and strangles the guy to death and kills him. And then he picks up the camera and he gives a thumbs up to the camera to end the movie. And that is the end of VHS 2. This movie had a budget of $350,000 and made a box office of $805,000. So, there you go. Let's do best of, worst of for VHS 2. My best of is gonna be the zombie waking up when they're in the middle of eating him, and there's just them being like, "Oh, sorry," you know. And my worst of, honestly, the whole first tape. It was terrible. I hated that whole first tape. It killed the mood of the movie almost instantly. So, there you go. You always have to start off with a banger, and this movie started with by far the worst movie, or the worst tape of the movie. So, there you go. That's my worst of. Yeah, so that's VHS 2. Like I said, the first tape is terrible. The second tape is a really fun premise. And it has some really fun moments in it. The third tape is batshit insane, and as it builds, it just gets more chaotic. It's really good. And then the fourth tape with the aliens, I'm a sucker for alien stuff, but it all just seems so rushed. I feel like aliens need to be like played out more. But yeah, I don't know. I like the whole cozy feel of all the friends together, but it was fine. It was nothing, you know. I like the point of view from the dog, and then it sucked having to watch him die at the end. But you know, so anyway, but yeah, that's it. That's VHS 2. Hope you like hearing me talk about it. Next week, hey, maybe it'll be Child's Play. Maybe we'll finish it up. If not, it'll be something else. I'll watch something else. But either way, there'll be something here. So come on back. Go check out the gaming channel. Shit, coming out all the time over there. This weekend there's another Red Dead video, and there's another a Madden series I just started where I'm trying to win the Super Bowl on all Madden difficulty and franchise mode, and it turns out to be a lot more difficult than I thought. So go watch that if you want. And yeah, thanks for sticking around. See you guys next week for whatever it is. Hopefully, Child's Play. We'll finish up Chucky. If not, like I said, something else. But either way, I'll see you guys next week. All right, bye.